transfer window's closed, it's done. We've had the first couple of games of the Premier League season come and go, and now that we're in the international window, this feels like the perfect opportunity for me to take a step back and do my Premier League predictions for the 24-25 season, because from where I'm sitting, having watched most of the up-and-coming teams over the last year or two, as well as the big six, the dominant sides, this is going to be the most competitive and the most tightly wound Premier League I think we have ever seen in the 24-25 season. All summer long here on the channel, we've been following all the headline transfers and all the interesting developments on a lot of these more ambitious, exciting, up-and-coming clubs looking to disrupt the status quo, the way things are. And in the video today, like I said, I'm going to be predicting the Premier League table from top to bottom, and I've got to say, this has got to be the hardest Premier League season to predict ever. What I want from you guys in the comment sections is tell me what I've got wrong, tell me what you would have done differently to me. Who do you think the surprise contenders will be to get into Champions League football? Who do you think the relegation candidates were? And who do you think will just be the general dark horse, a team that will come out of nowhere and maybe surprise us all? At any point in the video, if you do, laugh, you learn, you like something, or whatever it might be, shouting in anger, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And yeah, let's just get stuck straight into this one, because genuinely this is the hardest Premier League season to predict absolutely ever. And really, I had to do this 2 or 3 times over, because some teams you kind of look at their name and their club and you think, oh, they can't finish that low, you've got to put them a bit higher in your prediction. But I've stopped myself from doing that. I'm sticking to my gut, because we've did lots of great content on the channel, previewing the squad depth, previewing and analysing all the transfer business that's been done. So I feel like, you know, whatever my gut's telling me on the status of the squad, the quality of the manager, you know, all these other things that are going around the club, for my prediction video, I want to stick to that. I want my gut feeling to show here. And I think no better place to start than with the top of the table. I think this is going to be another Man City year. I think Man City are going to go on and win the title again. And what probably is going to be Pep Guardiola's last season, that'll make it 5 in a row. A proper piece of history for him and for the club. And really, it's so hard to look past that. Now, I do think the loss of Julian Alvarez might be something that we could slow City down in that business end of the period towards the back end of the year, because without Haaland and now, you know, without Alvarez, it is just Haaland up there now as the forward, and there's lots of other options like Man City are used to having in midfield and wide attack and all the rest of it. But Man City are going to compete on all fronts, you know, and when the fixtures really do start to pile up, and once we've been through the Christmas period and all the rest of it, I wouldn't rule out them finishing second, but I really do think they will have enough to get over the line. And if they are short of something, you could probably see them doing some business in the January window. So I think we stick with Man City winning this. In second, I think it is going to be, again, the bridesmaids of the Premier League, Arsenal, that will come into second place. I would kind of like them to win the title this year. I really do like a lot of players in their squad. I like a lot of the things they've been doing in terms of trying to reach that target over the last couple of years. But when I look at their squad, I just don't think they've got that firepower. I don't think they can outscore City across the season, and having them already dropping points this year, and I know it was a draw, but the way they're reacting and acting from it, they can tell they've already lost ground to City. So with that happening so early in the season, you know, it's maybe the Arsenal fans are going to speak their second place into existence, is kind of what I'm feeling here. Because it's hard to imagine them doing much better than what they did last year or the year before, and that's really what they need to do to wrestle this title away from City. You need City to maybe falter a little bit more, and with maintaining or doing better than how they've done over the last year or two, that is the recipe that is required, and I'm not too sure they're going to get all those things going their way this year. So Man City 1, Arsenal 2. Now when it comes to third position, this is really up for grabs for me, and I do think there's going to be a real surprise in the actual top 4, maybe even in third position. And I've tried my best to not let the current standings, the current table, like poison my opinion, but I really don't think it is. Again, when you look at transfer business, when you look at style of play, when you look at just everything flowing around, you know, what makes a club get into the top 4, break the mould of the established order, as it were, like we've seen with Tottenham and Aston Villa last year, Newcastle the season before, even when Leicester won the league. Not been in European football and having a good backroom department, transfer department, whatever, to make sure the whole club is like synergised is the secret sauce, is the secret recipe, and I think we can all agree that is Brighton at the moment. So I think it's going to be Man City 1, Arsenal 2, and I think Brighton are going to get into third with them really pushing on this year. They've made some amazing transfers. They're really really kicking up the level of the squad to new highs, to new levels. And with them not playing in European football this year, I don't see them chasing down the League Cup or the FA Cup unless they win games and they find themselves in the quarters of the semis later on. But I think we could see what Newcastle did 2 years ago, what Aston Villa and Tottenham tried to do last year. I think that's going to be Brighton. But the strength of their squad, the quality of their squad, and Aston Villa last year got to the Conference League semi-finals. I don't think they're going to have any of these things slow them down that maybe stopped Newcastle going a little bit higher in the table, or Tottenham or Aston Villa last year, and I think Brighton are going to get into third. And it might just be by the smallest amount, but I think in fourth position, just behind Brighton, is going to be Liverpool. I've been very impressed with Arne Slot's start to life at Liverpool. The transfer business has been quite minimal, but when you see the still world-class talent they've got all across the pitch here, it's very hard to imagine that they're not going to be in the top four. It's hard to imagine for a lot of people they won't be in the top three, but for me, Arne Slot's inexperience in the Premier League will probably show itself once we get to the festive period, and then once the fixtures really do start to pile up into 2025 with the last two Champions League games, the League Cup, the FA Cup, all that stuff will pile on. And Liverpool's squad has been quite thin for a number of years. I don't really think that's changed too much. The best 11, the best 15 or 16 is really high calibre, really high quality that will see them go far in all these competitions, and I think ultimately is going to land them fourth in the Premier League. And I think it's going to be a blessing in disguise for Newcastle United that they don't have European football this year, because they can just focus on regaining that Champions League status they got themselves last year from the season before. Alexander Isak, Anthony Gordon, Bruno Guimaraes, all the key players are still in the building, and Sandro Tonali is back as well. So this for me is going to be a really revitalised, and really, like, it feels like last season for Newcastle was like a gap year or whatever, where yeah, they got the Champions League stuff and all the rest of it, but the injury crisis, the transfer business even last year just wasn't totally on point. But this year, I think they're going to pick up where they left off the season before. We're going to see them much more robust defensively. We're going to see clean sheets being a much more regular thing for Newcastle, and the evolution and the development of the forward line is just going to fire them past so many opponents for me that Newcastle have to be in the reckoning for me, and I've got them in fifth position. Alongside Brighton, I do feel that West Ham have probably had one of the best and one of the most transformative transfer windows, and I think they're going to do exceptionally well. I think they're going to do very, very well this year. No two ways about it. They're going to get into European football for me. But looking at the teams above them, I don't know if they've quite got the firepower to get ahead of a Newcastle. I'm not sure if they've got the defensive nous in them to break into that top 5, top 4 positions of the teams that are ahead of them. But I do think West Ham's squad is Champions League level. I think they've got so many players in and around their best 11, their best 15 that are head and shoulders above so many opponents that they're going to have in the Premier League. And having a manager like Julian Lopetegui in charge, who is quite experienced when it comes to elite European football, I think West Ham are going to be right in amongst it all season long. But I do worry that firepower is going to be the thing that might slow them down. There might be some 1-1 draws that they'll be thinking we should have won that game. Maybe a 1-0 loss they could draw, that kind of thing. So I think West Ham will be happy with their year. It'll be a good sign of improvement. They'll probably be happier in the terraces on the style of play, the quality of player that they have on show, and ultimately they're going to finish in 6th position for me. Now you're probably sitting there scratching your head thinking, Quinny, if the top 6 doesn't have 2 of the top teams that were in the top 6 from last year, where are they? And I do have in 7th position Aston Villa. Now, Aston Villa's business this summer, they probably get a pass mark for it, but I don't really feel that the squad has got that much stronger. And with them now playing 8 Champions League group games in the same period of the season that we've seen their most impressive form last year, I just really struggle to imagine and believe that Villa are going to be top 5 again, top 4 again. I do think they're definitely still one of the best teams in the division. I definitely still feel they're going to beat a lot more teams than they lose. I think they've got the firepower to score 3 and 4 goals quite regularly throughout the season. But again, Unai Emery loves European football, and if Aston Villa can get into that top 10, top 16 place and get another set of Champions League games, take them up to 10, 12 if they progress even from that point, never mind what other cup runs they might be involved in. I just feel that the depth in their squad is going to be tested and is going to be pushed to its absolute limit. They've got great depth, I think, to handle a lot of this, don't get me wrong, but I just don't see them having enough in the tank to keep up the standards, to keep up the points accumulation that they got themselves last year. So I've got Aston Villa sitting in 7th. And really, it's a huge copy and paste effort, I think, for Tottenham. I think Tottenham, though, have probably did a bit better this window in refining their squad and lifting the overall level of the complete 20, 25-man squad or whatever. So I do feel that Ange will be able to rotate and will be able to deal with different competitions. I don't know if I'd say it better than Aston Villa, so I've got them in 8th, but I think they'll be able to do it a lot better than what Spurs could have done this time last year. So I think the majority of their business is about setting themselves up for competing on multiple fronts and seeing themselves trying to qualify back in for European football again. But we've seen with the amount of goals they concede, the points that they dropped last year, the games that they've won, I don't think there's going to be a huge change to that, as a huge arrestment to that. What the big difference for Tottenham this year is going to be, for me, is if they can score more than 2 goals on the regular. And if they do that, I think they'll keep pace. You know, even I've got them sitting here in 8th, I think it's going to be razor tight, razor thin, sharp, tight. So tightly wound that it's going to be goal difference. It's going to be 1 or 2 points splitting so many of these teams, because the quality of the squads, it's so hard to split. It's so hard to divide a lot of these teams. But Tottenham, for me, can't really put them over Villa when they didn't finish ahead of Villa last year. West Ham, Newcastle, Brighton have got just as good squads, but don't have that fixture pile on. And yeah, the other teams in the top 4 kind of speak for themselves. But maybe the next surprise addition I've got here into the top 10 is in 9th position, where I'm going to have Wolverhampton Wanderers, or Wolves. I was really impressed with them last year, and genuinely, like, not that I've not got any dog in the fight. I'm not a Wolves fan, but not to be like bitter about it or whatever, but Wolves were screwed last year so bad by refereeing decisions, by VAR. All sorts of controversy came around them last year, and I don't think that's going to happen to the same extent this year. And I think their transfer business has been very, very tidy. They've done some great moves. They've had a lot of big earners, high wage players that they've got off their books and they've sold on. They've also sold Pedro Neto, their star, to Chelsea, who was never really an ever-present player anyway. But with the additions that they've got in, Gary O'Neill's had a full pre-season this time. It's his 2nd year in charge. I think Wolves are going to be a really impressive side. I think they're going to beat a lot of the top teams throughout the year. And ultimately, I think Wolves are going to get into the top 10, and I've got them sitting in 9th. And then when it came to deciding who completes the top 10, this is the part I really did wrestle with, because there's a lot of really big clubs. There's a lot of really good squads that still aren't breaking into the top 10 for me. And ultimately, I landed on Chelsea to finish in 10th. And the main reason for that is they've got 40 million players, and they've not registered Cole Palmer for Thursday Night Football. So I think Chelsea are going to be a bit more clinical in the sense of having a Thursday squad and having a weekend squad. There will be some guys that cross over, of course. There is still a lack of quality in certain positions. Enzo Maresca is probably one of the favourites to be sacked before the season is out as well. So I do feel that there is some drama to ensue around Chelsea. There is going to be a bit of a barren spell where maybe they don't get the results, and they are going to be competing across multiple fronts. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Chelsea to get something right this year, and like, I just can't put them ahead of Spurs and Villa. I can't put them ahead of Newcastle and Liverpool. So yeah, for me, they're in 10th. Last year, I could not have imagined myself saying this, but I do feel just pushing into the top 10, one of the contenders to be best of the rest in the Premier League, one of the more fun and exciting teams to maybe watch as a neutral this year, is maybe going to be Nottingham Forest. They hung on to Morgan Gibbs-White, they held on to Elanga and Callum Hudson-Odoi, and bringing in James Ward-Prowse to be supplying those corners and free kicks for the likes of Chris Wood. It just really feels to me that, like, Nottingham Forest have got a great Premier League, like, best 11. You know, they've got a really good team all of a sudden after so many crap transfer windows where they're buying too many different players for all sorts of different money. It feels like they've kind of, they've got rid of they've separated the wheat from the chaff, is what I'm trying to say here. And again, with no European football, with a manager that's got them playing a bit more attacking, and with a transfer policy this summer that feels a little bit more coherent, a little bit more on point, I really can't look past Nottingham Forest as being in amongst that top 10 contention here, and I've got them breathing down Chelsea's neck all the way for that position. And again, I don't think there's anything to really split and divide these teams. It's going to be the finest of margins that really does determine this, like, 7th to 13th position, really. And just behind Nottingham Forest for me is probably going to be Fulham. I think Fulham have got that attacking guile, they've got that route to goal really established. They're not scared of any team in the Premier League, and having Emil Smith-Rowe come into that midfield now, it gives them that bit of upper class creative playmaker talent that I think they've been missing to maybe help them score a couple more goals, to help them decide those tighter games. And I think Fulham will be a lot of fun this year. I think they'll have a good season, and they're going to finish in 11th for me. 12th, I beg your pardon. And the reason I've got those teams there in those positions ahead of who I've got in 13th, which is Crystal Palace, who I did kind of fall in love with Glasner Ball at Palace in January. I was also a big Glasner fan from when he was at Frankfurt. But the transfer business for Crystal Palace this year is probably the worst of any of the teams we've featured so far. They lost Elise, they lost Anderson. And yeah, there's been good guys come in. They've spent money, they've brought in good quality players. But when I look at the Palace squad, I just don't think it's better than what it was last year, quite simply. And I can't imagine them really going on a huge heater. I can't imagine them breaking into the top 10. I can't imagine them getting into Europe as things stand at the moment. Happy to be wrong. Happy to have egg on my face, because the way they finished last year, like, honestly, like that Palace could have went on and done anything this year. But I just really feel that, maybe not that the wind has come out their sails a little bit, but I just don't think the transfer window was that on point for them. They almost lost Mark Guéhi right at the end, and I think Palace are still in transition. They might need that January window to really solidify the transformation they've made in this window, they've been trying to make in this window, and they might have a great second half to the season. Maybe they'll still have a good first half of the season, don't get me wrong, but yeah, I can't really justify putting Palace any higher than 13th. And that brings us to 14th. And if you've been a keen listener and watcher, you're maybe thinking, hold on, Quinny, you've got past another position. Where are they? And 14th, guys, I've got Man United. And I just cannot put them ahead of anyone else that is ahead of them in this list. I'm not a big Man United fan. I'm a bit of a Man United hater, if you like, for the most part. They've done some good business in this window. They've backed Eric Ten Hag. But again, I just don't see it going well this year. They're still relying on Amad Diallo and Marcus Rashford in the wide areas. Xerxes and Højlund are both interesting players that, I have a good degree of respect, or whatever you want to say. I think they're good players, but nothing else in the team really convinces me. Nothing else in the team really does make me think that they're going to go on a considerable run of performances. I wouldn't be surprised if Ten Hag gets sacked halfway through the year, and ultimately 14th, they probably are going to finish higher than 14th, but looking at it now, I just don't see who they're getting ahead of here. Fulham, Palace, Forest, Wolves, I think all these teams have got a much clearer identity, a much more established route to go. I've got a much more coherent best 11, best 15 players. And when I'm thinking about that in terms of ranking the squads and ranking how they're going to finish this season, Man United are 14th. Just behind them in 15th, I thought the way this summer window might have went that they could be contenders to break into the top 10. And I'm sure as the season goes on, they will be a bit of a surprise package. They might flirt with getting into 9th and 10th position. But ultimately, I've got them finishing in 15th. And that is Andoni Iraola's Bournemouth. I think they've got a really good squad here. And like the manager said himself, they're just waiting to add in some star additions to really elevate their squad. And I think they've got one or two of them in. But I don't think they've got quite enough where we could look at them versus some of these other teams that we've got in the top 10 and think that they should be outperforming them. So I've got Bournemouth sitting in 15th. And then we get to the relegation fight. And I think all of these teams are going to be in the dogfight all the way until the last game of the season. 16th position, though, I've got Everton. I just don't really see Everton getting enough goals to be safe from relegation. But when you see the performances they put in last year, despite all the points deductions, a big part of that was how good they were defensively, and I think they will be bringing that to the party. And with some of the recruitment that they've done in this window, maybe they've got a couple more goals in them than what they did last year, but I think Everton are going to really struggle to beat teams, to outscore teams, and they're going to be really in there. And what will probably save them is that Sean Dyche nous, that defensive record that they're probably going to see be a mainstay, a main part of their record throughout the 24-25 season. Now, they've probably got more firepower than Everton, but I don't think defensively they're going to have that same resilience and have that same nous. And for me, they're the number one candidate in the Premier League that is standing still. And if you stand still in the Premier League, you're going backwards. And in this position, just safe from relegation, I've got Brentford. I know everyone loves Mbuemo and Wissa, and yeah, they're going to score goals. They're going to be really attacking and counter-attack and all that stuff. But really, I don't think Brentford have got the squad. I don't think they've got the quality. I don't think they've added anything significant in this window to make me think they're going to do better than what they did last year. And so many of these teams already in the Premier League have been doing that. And like I said, if you're standing still, you're going backwards. And that's really the sentiment for me for Brentford. I actually thought when I was doing this list, I would probably be relegating Brentford, but they've just about saved it for me. So in 18th, the first team to be relegated in this video, I'm going to have Leicester City. Again, looking at the Leicester team, it just screams out relegation. It just looks like a championship side. And I'm putting that firmly at the midfield of Oliver, Skip and Winks. Skip and Winks for me is not a starting best 11 Premier League midfield. There is some talent in amongst the Leicester squad. They've also had to change manager this summer. I'm a huge fan of Odsonne Edouard and Vardy. I'm sure they're going to score goals. They're going to upset the apple cart here and there. But I think they're going to concede goals like a motherfucker. And if you concede goals all season long, you're going to be in the relegation fight. And ultimately, I just don't think they've got the quality to get past a Brentford or to get past an Everton and be better than them when it's all said and done. So I've got Leicester in 18th getting relegated back to the Championship, alongside Ipswich, who also got promoted this year. Did great to hang on to their manager, and have done some pretty good business. You know, I've got Ipswich in 19th here. Maybe they finish 18th. Maybe they save themselves from relegation and they relegate Brentford, like I maybe thought my hunch would have led me to. But again, when I look at the Ipswich squad, it just really is hard to imagine where they're going to collect their points from to keep them safe in this year. I think they're going to get relegated, and then the manager's maybe going to get a Premier League job next year or something like that. But it's great to have Ipswich back in the Premier League. I'm looking forward to seeing Portman Road be a bit of a fortress and get some famous results this year. But I don't think they're going to get enough of them, and they're going to finish in 19th. And that has me at 20th position, bottom of the table, signed, sealed and delivered for relegation is going to be Southampton. I'm just, again, very similar to Ipswich and Leicester. When I look at the quality of their squad, I just don't see them getting enough goals. I think they've actually got the weakest attack of maybe some of these relegation threatened teams that we're talking about here. I don't see them keeping enough teams out defensively. And when I look at their midfield, I don't see any guile. I don't see any top-end creative quality in there that will separate them from the pack. So it is all the three promoted teams. I've got them all going straight back down. And I think it's going to be, like I said at the tip-off of this video, the tightest Premier League ever. If I was to absolutely nail these predictions in the Premier League table, does finish the way I've got it on my notepad right now, in so many of these positions, it's going to be goal difference. It's going to be 1 or 2 points. There's going to be nothing between so many of these teams in the Premier League this year. We've had 3 games go. We've seen some exciting stuff already, but it's just getting started for me. Let me know in the comments section what you think of these predictions. How right or wrong do you think I am? On screen and now some other stuff that I've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay out of trouble, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.